Hello and welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're logging in from. Thank you for joining us in our second TTG Conversations webinar. Today, our topic is on setting the stage for return in business events. So if you join us on April 29th, when we did our first TTG Conversations webinar, we focused on virtual meetings and how we are relying on it in the different stages of recovery in business events, and also how planners have to shift their thinking in organizing events when hybrid formats take over. So today we're shifting our focus to the other side, looking at the offline business events and meetings, and to understand how the state of or the formats of meetings is going to be when we start returning to physical venues. Yeah. Joining us today, we have Ian Cummings, who's the Global Vice President Commercial for CWT Meetings and Events. And we have Kerry Healy, Vice President Sales Asia Pacific for Accor. And we have Vincent Yap, Director Integrated Marketing Solutions, Pico Art International. We also have some slides on now, which will help you understand some of the key points that we are discussing. Lynette, if you can hear me in the background, can we get the slides going? Okay, that's all right. Maybe that's there's a bit of a disconnect in communications there. First, before we begin, we get a poll, and we would like you to respond to that. It will flash on screen, and you can put in your answers, and then we can have a look at the results later on. Meanwhile, let's get started. We'll set the stage for this discussion, yeah, by understanding how will the various stages of business events recover. And this is a question for all, and we can start with Ian.
Okay, yeah, so I guess I'd probably start by saying that everybody's been having a lot of virtual meetings and a lot of Zoom meetings, and I guess the events industry is dying to get back to meeting as soon as possible. I'm sure we're all looking forward to starting meeting again. I think that, you know, timing-wise, there's a lot being modeled now by different markets and different economies, particularly across Asia Pac. I think Asia Pac is really important because it's kind of the first area that is beginning to see the release of the lockdowns, particularly in China and Australia and so on. But I think every country now across the globe is planning the slow release. I think that, initially we're probably going to see some small meetings happening, probably very local, probably domestically within market, avoiding the travel. And small numbers, depending on what the facilities the hotels can provide, and keep the distancing there at least for June and July. Then I think everybody really is hoping for a comeback in Q3, Q4 particularly, to see the numbers start to increase. But I also think that a word of caution, the big meetings for 500 plus or 1,000 plus, I think it's unlikely we're going to see those until 2021, which is a bit concerning, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks for that, Ian. How about you, Kerry?
I mean, I completely agree with Ian. We are definitely Zoom fatigued, so thank you all for taking the time to join us. But it's funny because I think we also need to caution everything we say today with another lens, which is whatever we say today could be obsolete tomorrow, which is the very nature of the crisis that we're living in, right? Conditions, restrictions, flight capacity, border quarantine rules are changing by the day, and when they change fast. And so we sit here today thinking about recovery, but let's talk about, I don't know, Australia, which is opening up. If they have a second wave, they may close again. So to Ian's point, I think we should be careful that recovery will not look the same everywhere, and it will not look the same within all the individual sectors of what makes up the business events and social events business. Just take everything that we're saying with some parameters, I guess. But for me, domestic, and what I was probably pleasantly surprised about on a call this morning was hearing from our China team that actually for them it's like the business is as usual. It's coming back. Their meetings actually are quite a lot. they're having buffet breakfast and they're having buffet lunch, yet we're spending hours writing new operational standards on how to deliver bento boxes. How many food service people am I going to need to deliver breakfast to the room in case delegates don't want to go to the breakfast? So, it's sort of crazy, but I think we will always work in tandem with local governments. And the care of duty, I think to Ian's point before, that when will someone feel like they have the confidence to get on a plane, forget like assuming borders are open and we're all open for business, when will that be? So that, take a Singapore, the big, we've obviously lost a lot of business here in Singapore, having one of the largest hotels, but when will those massive big corporate pieces of business come back? Yeah, 21, 22, I'm with you. But some good signs, I think what we'll see is some good government support. And we're seeing that in Indonesia, even though they're in the grip of still their first stage of COVID, we already know that the government will resume government businesses, which will give a little bit of support back into the environment. So domestic, intra-zone, international, small meetings, government meetings, some social events where people just don't want to delay. Like I know we're having a lot of questions about the Indian wedding market in India. They want to get married. People want to move forward with life. But maybe they won't be as big.
Yeah. Okay. Before we go on to Vincent, the results on the first poll came up. It's a split between a return in October, December, and only in 2021, which is quite like what Ian and Kerry said. There are still some people in the audience who are looking to bring their events back in June, July, and August, September, which is also good to know. I think the uncertainty, it's normal. Yeah. Thank you so much for the results, Lynette. Vincent, your turn.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. So it's always tough to be the last speaker in any question because all the good points have been brought up by the first two panelists. So I think I do echo both Ian and Kerry's comment. I think one of the key points to note is that's brought up by both of my fellow panelists is that I think the situation is still very fluid. And it evolves day on day. I mean, there's obviously talks and information that there may be, and they expect a second wave in some of the countries. So that's going to totally disrupt whatever plans that we may have thinking, or projections that we have thinking that events will come back in the last quarter of this year. I think just take Singapore, for example. I think our government just rolled out the phase 1 to 3 easing of the circuit breaker measures. And even with that, you can see it's a very cautious approach, and we are, even if meetings do come back, we're looking at really a lot of enhanced measures that we need to take in terms of ensuring that the venues have space to do social distancing, that there's less contact between the attendees, and also, I mean, if you look at travel, the lift of the travel bans, I think Europe is intending or projecting to lift to ease their travel ban in mid-June. And that's, some of us, we may feel that that's, well, a little bit early, but since the numbers are dropping. And then in New Zealand, I think there's information that they are already allowing meetings with a capacity of about 100. So if you think of it, even if as mentioned by my two esteemed panelists as well, even if meetings do come back, the format of the meetings will really change dramatically. We won't be seeing any large-scale meetings, not just because the confidence for people to travel may not be there as yet, but also because of all the enhanced measures, the capacity of the venues will probably be half, essentially. Yeah.
Can we just look at the other factors that can also impact attendance at physical events? So, I mean, offline, Vincent, you mentioned, compulsory quarantine for cross-border travelers, leaving and entering and returning back to the countries. If compulsory quarantine remains, it's going to deter people from leaving the country at all for business events, because it's going to take time off returning back to work and to the family. What else do you think would be major deterrents for people to travel out for business meetings?
Yeah, I think
Anyone to jump in?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, Kerry. So I think in terms of, as I said, I think quarantine periods for international travelers itself would already add on to the ancillary cost of participating in any event, right? Generally, in a normal situation, you probably arrive a day or two before the event, and then you leave the day after, right? But with that, it depends on, and it will depend on individual governments whether and to which countries they would apply this quarantine period. But I guess from an organizer's point of view, in terms of the venue, if you look at a lot of the new format or new operational instructions that the venues have shared with us. I mean, I've just seen one from TSEC recently on the guidelines for events going forward, large-scale events going forward, and I've obviously seen one from MBS going forward. And the guidelines basically it's very clear that all events, all venue capacities are going to be half. Essentially, it's going to drop to 50%. We're looking at social distancing. The format of theater sitting or classroom sitting is changed. The format of for organizers especially, the format for your tea breaks, your lunch breaks, will it be bento boxes, staggered timings? All these will impact programming and also obviously impact the costs. Registration queues, you will not see registration queues, right? Or we hope not to see registration queues in the sense that you wouldn't have space for it anyway. So contactless or online check-ins will probably be more of a norm, but that all will add on to the cost of both the organizer as well as the attendee as well. I think at the end of the day, it's really counting the cost and how long, what are the other areas that we can incorporate really. So I think I've mentioned this offline before that in terms of how do we kind of supplement the physical is really through the virtual component to it.
Okay. Thanks, Vincent. We will tackle that in detail afterwards, the changing formats of physical meetings. Ian, you've got anything to add to the question on what other obstacles there are?
I was just going to say, I think on the compulsory quarantine, I think that is a key factor for the return of meetings. I don't believe that when there is quarantine factors coming into play that a meeting is going to happen. I mean, people aren't just going to travel if they're going to either have to come back to their country and be quarantined for 2 weeks or going to a particular country. So for me, that's got to be lifted for the meetings to start to happen and come back. And then secondly, a debate that we've been having here in the UK, they talk about 14-day quarantine on arrivals. Nobody's doing it. How do you enforce that somebody goes home and stays at home for 14 days? It's just kind of not really happening. So that I think we're just looking to see the compulsory quarantine lifted for us to start to get meeting again. And then I think that it's up to us as facilities, as agencies, as organizers, as production, to make sure that we build confidence in the people that are attending. We may well have countries where restrictions have been lifted, but if you're inviting, 50 attendees and 20 of them are going to say, I just don't feel comfortable traveling yet, then the meeting is probably not going to happen as well. So I think all the information that's coming out on LinkedIn that's being shared and different organizations sharing information about what they're doing is great. And I think we need to continue with lots of that, Visit Singapore business events. TSEB in Thailand is putting a lot out of information about what's going on with their airports, what's going on with facilities and the hotels and stuff like that. And I think that's all great information to share within the industry to start to build people's confidence to get us start meeting again.
Yep. Okay. Kerry, you got anything to add there?
Just to add on to Ian's point, I mean, it would be probably good to see the government and the industry bodies really work together, especially where the natural flows are, so around Asia Pacific, to try and have some commonality on those key topics that are going to create the confidence in the destination, in the products, in the venues, in the companies. I think would be a really good thing for the industry as a whole, and it would be nice to see them come together. Be easier to follow, easier to digest as the buyer. What is my experience going to look like in Singapore, in Thailand, in Malaysia? If I have a baseline level of comfort, that would be great. And I mean, to your point, Ian, there are some countries where the 14-day quarantine is compulsory in hotels. So that's like, if I take Australia, that's got to be lifted before any meeting's going to go there. Yeah. And the other big thing I think is going to come down to, I think in Asia we've had so many. We've had SARS, we've had, we've been impacted by MERS, we've had other major challenges, and we're perhaps a little bit more resilient than some of the other markets. So I think some of our long haul markets into this region, we're talking about a vaccine, and people will feel comfortable when there's a vaccine. There will be a part of the population that feels like that.
Yep. Okay, great. Well, let's get back to the topic on the changing formats of physical meetings, offline meetings, if you will. What are your thoughts on that, Ian?
Well, obviously, again, sorry, Kerry, to keep on coming back to facilities, but the hygiene factors are just going to be massively important. So everything when we're planning a venue that we can get to understand that a particular venue has got a set of processes that are being adhered to, that there's maybe some form of qualification on, that they've certainly got the space to allow distancing. And as Vincent said, maybe the capacity is going to be 50% of what it was for the meeting. But the hygiene factor will be absolutely critical, I think, going forward for us to be able to meet again. Then I think that the kind of selective attendee management may come into play. So I think a lot of government bodies are talking about some form of health passport. Whether that comes to fruition or not, I don't know, but we do need some form of checking to make sure that the people with green and in the all clear, well, hopefully it should be a lot easier for them to move around. I've just read this morning that the UAE are introducing a non-invasive rapid laser test for COVID-19, and they can test somebody with a laser and they have the results within seconds. That again, kind of builds the confidence again. So some form of selective attendee testing will be absolutely key as well. And then, I know that you did virtual and hybrid last time, but I do think that this also falls into the offline piece as well. So if our meetings are going to be restricted to a smaller number of people, let's say 20 to 50 people perhaps, then I do think we need to be putting forward to our customers the strategy around having a hybrid meeting and reaching a wider audience. Maybe that meeting will just be local. Maybe it will be in China, for example, but we may want to stream that out to the rest of Asia Pac and get 1,000 people involved for a 20-person physical meeting. And I do think that that's a great form of ROI. So we should consider the two combined, not completely separate as offline or online.
Yeah. Okay. Appreciate establishing that link, Ian. I think that you're right. It's compulsory that we need to look at both at the same time. Yeah. Kerry?
Always hard to come second. I don't envy you, Vincent. Do you want to go second?
No, go ahead, please. No.
Look, I think I have a mixed viewpoint on this because of course technology is going to be a massive enabler, and I think Asia Pacific's probably been a little bit lackadaisical on this area, right? We've been a bit more face to face. It's part of the culture. We like coming together, but we've had to adapt really quickly with using sort of various video apps and conferencing apps, and of course it would be a miss, I guess, of most businesses not to sit down and rethink how they're going to deliver their programs, be them internal, be them external. So again, I come down to this, my starting point, we should be careful not to lump all meeting types together. There is just some content that cannot be delivered virtually with the same impact. So depending on the outcome you want, you are going to reconsider how you deliver it. So I absolutely agree with you that digital audiences will complement physical audiences, which means that hotels better really wake up fast and make sure that we have partnered with a really good AV company, or we have full-time engineers and tech staff, or we align with great agencies that can bring in that staff for us to deliver that seamless experience. Because, the other factor I think, and the opportunity I see in all this is, if I take our own sales and distribution conference that we do every year, there is no way that next year we could just replicate the content and stick it online. We would bore everyone to death. We need to rethink and what is the delegate experience when you're having a meeting and you're not there and you don't have that little coffee break catch up. And so how do you build engagement across a topic? How do you people are listening? How do you know that anything is sinking in and what message has been taken out, and how do you carry that through? So we've spoken to many of our corporate clients, and we know that they will shrink meetings. We know that they will look for hybrid meetings, but we also know that when the time is right, they will bring back face to face. And again, I go back to the jokes. And last we were having, just before we went live, we were having all sorts of last minute sound issues and technical issues. And I think people want to see people, and there is like a human desire for that. And I think when it's right, I'm not so sure there'll be as much change as we think. To your point, the normal things, hygiene, of course, and I know we're going to talk about it later, so I'm not going to bring it up. Rethinking how we use our space and sell our space, 100%. We've got to like complete what we're comfortable doing and rethink what we can offer and be flexible.
Yep. Great. Thank
Vincent?
you, Kerry. Yeah, Vincent. Well, Vincent, you raised some very good points ahead of this question on how the format of meetings is going to change. But looking at the kind of events that Pico does, you know, from the smaller, more private product launches to the larger trade shows and exhibitions, what would you think are going to be the major changes in formats for those various types of events?
So I think besides what I've mentioned in terms of like the registration areas, the use of technology to kind of reduce the opportunity for contact. I think most I mean I echo what Kerry has mentioned in terms of a human interaction is insuppressible, especially after the pandemic. I think everyone, especially in Asia, would want to meet up, will still want to meet up face to face. But as we progress and fingers crossed, where in 2021 we can see the majority of larger scale meetings, or the cap of the limit on large scale meetings start to ease. I think it's more of a public confidence issue. I think besides the sanitization and the cleaning, etc., especially in a trade show, for example, if you're looking at a large scale trade show, you still need to have people circulating in the airsway, etc.
Yeah.
And it's unlike a conference where you can kind of dictate where people sit and how far away they sit from each other. In a trade show environment, obviously that it's kind of impossible. So I think formats in terms of obviously in terms of like a wider airsway, so that you kind of widen the space where people and then in terms of the number of people circulating within a trade show floor, probably would have to be managed. So it won't be like a first come as in a free for all and you just come and you go in. You'll probably have to manage it in terms of per square meter or per 2 square meter, one person per 2 square meters of trade show space in that sense. And I think whether it's a trade show or business meeting or conference, networking is always one of the two main components. Probably the use of technology more in terms of meeting, and then your networking lounge spaces, obviously, other than staggered timings, obviously probably would have to be built such that you still have a certain level of distancing, while you can see the person face to face, but you're not going to be able to kind of have coffee with the person beside you, but still be able to facilitate that communication.
Okay, great. Thanks, Vincent. Lynette, can we pull out the second poll? Audience, if I can just trouble you to put in your answers very quickly. The poll again, please, Lynette. It's disappeared. Okay. So while you're doing this, I'm going to bring Kerry back on the question. Kerry, how are venues responding then to all the changes in the format of meetings that we discussed?
I mean, honestly, it's a bit early to answer the question, right? Because for most of our hotels, I mean, sadly, we still have a large majority, well, a significant number of hotels closed, as do most hotel groups. As I said to you, in China, we're surprised because we're not really seeing a change of format, but maybe that's because the style of inquiries is still relatively small. But and a large part of what we're doing now is rebooking. We're still in that cycle. So whatever we cancelled during January, February, March and rebooked this period is now being moved yet again. So yeah, of course, for the really significant programs where maybe they were like not quite buyouts, but taking up 80% of the space, it's like, well, how are we going to fit your program in? So it's a rethinking of all that space. So it's working very creatively with floor plans, with redesigns, with rethinking how we manage crowd control, what type of how do we use technology as an enabler, perhaps, for parts of the meeting? Do they reduce their delegate size? Do we have the right room structure then to be delivering some of the digital audiences content simultaneously to main activity or adjacent to? crowd control with the food. They're wanting to know our hygiene plans, which we're busy, writing and just got out on LinkedIn, and just going out to the B2B community tomorrow. So I think all of that's coming, but you're working under such huge pressure and timelines and trying to focus on what's important. But I can't say I wish I could share with you some like wacky example, but I think practically it's just, at the moment, I think my biggest point here is that meeting and events is always been about being able to curate an experience for a customer, right? So now we just have a whole lot of other things we have to think about to still give that customer a personal curated experience in a venue, in a hotel, and in the destination. We're going to work with our partners differently. We're bringing in partners differently. I think there'll be a lot more collaboration. There will have to be for us all to survive and to get through this and still come out delivering what's most important at the end of the day. Vincent wants his client to walk away with the same type of experience. We don't want the delegate to have a different experience because we've got a unique circumstances we have to manage. So we want the brand experience, whether it's mine, whether it's Ian's, whether it's Vincent's, in the consumer and the company, the personal and the company experience, to still walk away and be strong and solid. And for people to walk away thinking there was still value, right? It was a good thing to be there in person. I mean, God forbid we do anything and all of that changes. We'll be careful of that.
Great. Right. Do we have the results for that poll? Okay, never mind. Oh yes, okay.
Sorry, just now I have a technical issue, so we just need to revote again. So sorry. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. So sorry, audience. So thanks for your help again. Yeah. All right. So we'll just move on to the next question. For Ian and Vincent, we can start with Vincent this time around. Okay. How are your teams having to bring in new services and processes to support clients with all these new considerations now?
Yeah, so from a Pico perspective, I think 2 years ago, we've kind of established a digital or technology division, which is called Pico X, and we actually hired a chief digital officer to work with us with the different businesses to kind of craft out a digital strategy globally. So I think that was quite good in terms of planning. I think that was quite good foresight in the first place, and it is actually quite, it was timely because when this pandemic obviously appeared, we already had some solutions, virtual event solutions or digital solutions that we could help clients pivot towards the virtual experience with a lesser lead time, and we already had the team obviously ready. So I think that's something that we have kind of ramped up in terms of aggressively really introducing that to our clients during this time. I think, as I said, borrowing a quote from Albert Einstein, really in the middle of adversity, there's always great opportunity. So we do see this as also as an opportunity for us to expand our capabilities and to introduce that to our clients.
Right. Thanks, Vincent. The results from the last poll is out. There's a close tie between uncertainty around restrictions and safety measures, as well as attendance. Well, these are the same concerns that our panelists have also shared. Having to cancel and postpone, I think that uncertainty around the possibility of the event actually happening, that's also worrying. Weather costs and logistics, yes, for sure. We still have a small percentage of people in the audience who are not quite sure what are the top concerns. Yeah, thanks, Lynette, for that. And Ian, what sort of new approaches and new processes are you seeing happening?
I think to speak to the results that were just flashed up, I mean the safety, security of our attendees at the meetings has got to be our highest priority. It generally is anyway. In most of the surveys that we do, we see safety and security coming up as one of the top three in terms of consideration. But I think that with this crisis, then it certainly filters right to the top now. So what does that lead us to do? Well, it leads us to change a little bit our behavior around venue selection. So those venues with the highest level of accreditation will be the ones that win and the most space. But then not just the venues, it's the airlines as well. everything that you do is going to cost some form of money, and those that are investing the most in safety of passengers, travelers, attendees are the ones that are probably going to get the highest level of confidence in order to book the meeting there. I also think that goes for the whole supply chain. It's not just airlines and hotels. There's so much more involved. There's production companies. We need to be confident the equipment is sterilized, is clean. The people that they're using have been checked, and therefore they're not bringing anything to a meeting, etc. So, we will focus on hotels and airlines because it's the big portion, but let's think about the rest of the supply chain in the events world as well. Again, airport security. Will there be airports that are high tech, that have all the correct distancing capabilities in? Again, sort of referring back to the UAE, it's a massive airport. There may be an opportunity for good spacing at passport control. In other airports that I've been to, maybe not quite as much, and therefore that may cause us to change our decision on location. So yeah, I think there's so many different factors going to come into play, but the safety and security of our attendees has got to be the overriding factor now and for the future as well.
All right, thank you. That brings us to nicely into the next question I have for Kerry, actually. Now, Accor is working with Bureau Veritas, is that how I pronounce its name, in Europe to reopen hotels. And here in Singapore, there's SG Clean. What else is Accor doing in terms of the hygiene factor?
So the initiative, which is labelled All Safe by Accor, is done in partnership with Bureau Veritas, and they're a worldwide leader in safety inspection certification process. To Ian's point, we think that's important as well. So yes, it's absolutely a global initiative, just because they're based in Europe. Obviously, as I've said all along, you can never have one operating or one rule for every country. So clearly here in Singapore, SG Clean is the important sort of certification, and our hotels will have that as well. So, and where other countries have something as strong and as rigorous as SG Clean, then we will embody both. It just means that we hope to create this real sense of assurance. So that is, I mean, it's not just a label. There's a full operating procedure that touches the bedroom, the lobbies, the lifts, the how food is handled from supplier to the kitchen to your table, so to the plate. The meeting and event portion of that guideline will have some more work done on it as well as we get through the process. In addition, we also announced the partnership with AXA Insurance, so that for every guest staying in an Accor hotel, moving forward, they'll have access to this sort of medical appointment. So if anyone's feeling sick, it's a complimentary service as part of our agreement with AXA, which I think will give that another level of comfort, because they'll be available in multiple languages. It's a global initiative, and I think it's just that next level to make sure that guests feel safe when they're in our hotels. And guests, we also have an obligation, as Ian said, to put guest safety and security, and also our staff safety and security at the heart of all that we'll do. I mean, don't forget, some of these hotels are large. We employ a lot of people in them. We also want and care for them. So it's a huge commitment to our people, to our customers, and we just at the beginning of launching this, and you'll start to soon see the All Safe logo. And I did put a handout on the chat, so you see the All Safe one pager there. So if you want a little bit more information, you can go there. But we're not the only ones doing this, and to Ian's point, it's required. But let's not forget that hotels have long been held, especially international hotels, to very high standards. You have to have pass up in the kitchen. There's lots of other partners. We also work with other sanitation brands like Diversey, so we make sure our protocols are incredibly rigorous. And yes, of course, this makes you look through what are your high traffic points, what needs extra attention, and a part of creating the level of confidence is really, it's clean, we know it's clean, but when the customer's there, are we going to have to put some more effort? Are we going to have to pull more people in to be seen to be doing things? we'll be doing it, but it will be in addition to what's already done, because part of that comfort and security comes from people seeing, oh yes, okay, I register, it's happening. And so it's going to be a massive part of what we do moving forward at a level we've probably never had to quite do it before.
I think it's quite interesting. I was talking with a customer this week who was saying that hotels will have common areas because unless you do a complete hotel buyout, which some of the big global customers are considering more, because then they can control the environment of their people. But if you have a hotel with 2 or 3 groups in, then there's a whole different set of problems that come into that. And then what about use of common areas? Do we need to make sure that we don't allow that actually they're confined in their one space, because then they feel protected with their employees that they know don't have any symptoms or anything like that, but then there's a cross-contamination with other people in the hotel. So I think that'll be really interesting going forward, and may encourage some of our customers to say, okay, obviously the huge hotels, it's very difficult to do a buyout, but we may look at a tier 2 style hotel that has the necessary accreditation, but you could do a complete buyout, and then therefore you're in a contained environment. So that could be quite interesting for us as agencies going forward.
And I do think that, and in speaking to some customers who are perhaps more focused on the incentive space, that's already where the conversation's going, because obviously taking care of people that are your highest performers, the ones you're trying to reward, you want to make sure they come back pretty healthy. But I mean, not that anyone attending a conference, you want them home healthy, but I think to your point, when we talked about unusual requests, these are some of the things that we're going to have. We're going to have clients who say, I don't want my tea break anywhere near where there's anyone else having a tea break if it's going to be outside. So then your choice will either take the whole space, because also, I'm sorry, I'm going to touch an area, at the end of the day, we also have to make money, right? This has to be sustainable changes. So there are going to be some very increased costs for the whole supply chain in terms of all the new hygiene accreditation. There's going to be loss of revenue because we are now putting a third of the amount of people in a room. So we're going to have to combat that with how we price things and how we talk about value to customers, and what price does space and comfort and security have in this conversation. And I think we should be thinking about that, because of course I'm sure that everyone's going to say yes to get business, but if this isn't going to be 3 months, is it going to be 6 months? Is it going to be 2 years? Really, when is there a vaccine? So pre that, I think we all need to be really careful about what we're expecting, and when we're creating ideas with customers and putting solutions down, and things cost, I guess is the message there.
All right. I've just got one last question before we move on to the audience Q&A. Now, Kerry mentioned a very important point about how hotel cleanliness accreditation is going to be very important, because hotels have always been established a high standard in that regard. So what happens to unique venues then? Because there is an increased demand for unique venues, but unique venues may not have that high level of standards compared to hotels. So what sort of demand will unique venues expect to see when business starts to rebound? Ian or Vincent,
I'm happy to start. So I think all venues and facilities that are hosting attendees have to take the necessary steps to get some form of accreditation, because if we don't have that confidence as an agency, we're not going to book our customers in there. So we're talking a lot about the big hotels like Accor, who we partner with really well, and we have every confidence that in them taking the necessary steps and have all the accreditations across the globe for their facilities. But of course, as you mentioned, there's lots of other facilities that we use. There's second tier hotels, and I think that those people that are in attendance on this forum, that are part of those groups, really need to make sure that their facilities, their hotels are taking some form of accreditation, because the booking simply won't come back if they don't have that accreditation. We're not going to put a client anywhere where we don't feel confident that the hygiene standards have been met. So I think this is just for the meeting and event industry to make sure that we're all adhering to build that to standards and building that confidence for our attendees. So it cuts across everybody, not just the big hotel chains.
Okay, good. Vincent, any inputs on that?
Yeah, I think from a organizer's perspective, in terms of a trade show or even those unique small venues for those business meetings, even there is a basic level of certification obviously required by every government that they need to adhere to if you're maintaining any kind of facility. But I think as long as the venue owners are able to demonstrate what are the enhanced measures that they have put in place, essentially. Like if you look at recently, I just had a chance to look at the guidelines from obviously, as I mentioned, from MBS, and of course they've obviously ramped up their cleaning processes and even in terms of crisis management. So in the event that if somebody were to be identified, as having high temperature and he was at the venue, for example, what is the risk mitigation process that they'll have in place? I think that plays a part. Because you can be preemptive, but also what happens if it happens? What are the crisis management process that you have to ensure that the rest of the participants are also safe? So that would also play a part in the selection of the venue as well.
Okay, cool. Okay, let's get straight to the audience Q&A. I've got one here from Michael. From now until the recovery of business events, what strategies or tactics should business event players take to give themselves a better chance to still be around at the other end of this? So if you'd like to hear from all of you, we can start with Kerry.
So, but where's Michael from? Does he want to tell us? Where's he coming from? From being a...
So this is Michael Che. He's based here in Singapore.
Okay. I'm going to just speak with my environment, I guess, and I'll leave Vincent and Ian to think differently. I mean, for us right now, about surviving is the rethinking process. This is our hotels doing the work now while it's slow to plan. Do they have an AV partner? What does meet safe look like in their hotel? Redrawing floor plans, thinking creatively about traffic flow, social distancing, different types of setup. Do you have the right furniture? Do you need to go out and find new furniture? How can you handle private groups? Can you do groups within groups? This is the type of activity we've got our hotels working on. And, to that point, putting together packages whereby we are looking at the concept of the first phase, which I said was the hybrid meeting. Well, how do we go out to corporate customers who may have some meetings, but they're not right for delivering virtual content? So what do our packages look like? Or how can we have a presenter in one small room with 50 people, but in different small subsets of small rooms, all receiving the same content. So these are the types of the ideas that we're thinking of, and I know that the team at Fairmont Swissotel Singapore have done an incredible job on this with Encore, their AV partner, and it's quite exciting to see. I know that our Australian hotels are very close to announcing something in this space. What the market seem to want in those markets. There I said China's just out there. They've done sales blitz, not virtual, but they've put campaigns in place, and it seems like in China that's just working. So they haven't done anything outside of the norm for the business, and it's coming back. I think that'll be different in different places. I know that one of the in Australia had a really tough year, right? It had the bushfires, and then, like the rest of the world, had to deal with this major pandemic. But the industry body worked very hard with corporations, and they got consensus that corporates would spend their meeting dollars in Australia. I mean, these are some of the ideas you have to start to think about, depending on the DNA of the country. How big is your domestic footprint? What's the ability to do that? I think for Singapore, we have a great ability. This is the home of all the Asia Pacific headquarters. How do we work together as the industry to get some of these virtual hybrid meetings going? Can our meeting rooms be used as production houses, extra production houses? Some of the ideas would spring to mind.
Okay, Ian?
Yeah, hi Michael, and thanks for the question, and nice to hear from you again. Michael and I used to work together a long time ago, so good to hear from you. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot that can be doing. I don't know the specifics of your business, but I think, as we've alluded to during this virtual session now, there's a lot of concern out there. There's a lot of what do we do now type questions, and therefore, one of the things that we've been doing is putting together a safe return strategy for a number of our customers. And what is it? That's kind of a building of a whole set of criteria for the safe return to meetings and events. And we've been using that as a platform to do some consultancy for our customers. We have obviously some big global customers, being a global company, and they're turning to us and saying, okay, how do we go about having meetings now in the future? So we're providing them with information that's absolutely relevant. There's so much information out there. We're building an information hub so as it's just pertinent to them and they can access all the information they need. We're giving them templates of checklists that we've developed to make sure that we've gone through the necessary steps to build that confidence with them. We're helping them with what terms and conditions might look like going forward. We're helping them with pricing, and as Kerry alluded to, the pricing may look quite different because of costs involved for buying out a facility and so on. So, I'd recommend that continue a huge engagement with your customers. I think that's massively important. Decide what it is that you can bring to them, whether it's some consultancy work, whether it's helping them start their first meetings programs, get going again in a very small way, or whether it's providing them with some content that you already have. Again, I think that the virtual piece is great at the moment, and building that into their existing strategy. What is your strategy now? How do we build a bit of hybrid in there if we can, and make sure that you have great ROI? ROI going forward, I think, is going to be more important than ever. I think as an industry, we've not been brilliant at it. We kind of play with it a little bit, but it surprises me when we are asked to put on an event for hundreds of thousands of spend and there isn't a real strong ROI factor attached to it. You wouldn't do that with IT equipment. For some reason, we get away with it in the meeting and event space and we don't do ROI. So putting together something for the customers to saying, hey, I can help you measure your ROI on this now that we emerge from this in a bit of a simpler way, that would also be a great way of engaging with your customers. Everybody's different. We know everybody wants to meet again, but really helping your customers see a way forward and the path forward, I think, is the great way of engaging.
Great. I'm going to move on to the next question. I've got a question here about contact tracing responsibility. Whose responsibility is that? Is that the organizer or is that the venue? I'm going to go with Vincent. Quick and short answer, Vincent.
Yeah, I think as in most parts, I think the organizer will be responsible in parts for contact tracing, because I think it's your attendee, and I think that also encompasses a bit of the insurance portion in terms of public liability as well. So I think when it comes to that, it's definitely more towards the organizer's responsibility than the venue.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay, thank you. And this question, I love this question. What do you think we need to do to overcome potential public bashing on social media for organizing meetings and events in the future?
I think that's a great question. Public bashing on social media for organizing meeting and events. Well, I hope that when we organize, whoever does the organizing does so in a very responsible way. I think that this gives us a new opportunity to focus on really key areas such as attendee safety. We've already touched a lot on that. I think the sustainability aspect coming out of this should be much more on the front of everybody's agenda. I know that it's a big topic for many of our customers now. So how do we really drive a sustainable meeting and events program going forward? And I think that's really important for us in an industry. Overall, responsible business approach. If we follow guidelines of responsible business practice, then again, hopefully that doesn't allow us to end up being in a public bashing. Yeah, I think we're cautious as an industry. We'll be responsible in the decisions that we take. We'll follow government guidelines, absolutely. And therefore, we'll only start making people or helping people facilitating meetings when the time is right, with the right security measures in place. So, the steps we can take not to get a public bashing. I hope that our industry we don't need that.
Right. Kerry, is there anything for you to add to it?
Kind.
Sorry, can you say that again?
I said if we haven't learned anything from this, we need to be kind.
That's right. Absolutely. That's right, man. That's right. Yeah. Okay, we'll move on to a couple of similar questions around the use of space now. I think they have all heard how venues would have to be, or rather planners would have to accommodate take in larger venue space in order to facilitate the social distancing. So how would the rates be then? Would it be still, for this square meters of space with the additional buffer as an add-on, or is it going to be extended square meters then?
Again, sorry, from my point of view, again, it depends on which country you're in, because we have some different pricing models. If I was in the USA right now, no big deal, because in the US it's a la carte pricing. You pay a meeting room hire for the room. If you want to set it up, you pay the setup. This rate, da 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 da. By the way, you don't get to book the ballroom unless you book the minimum room. So it's much more structured. We're going to face some challenges here, where we're going to have suddenly a ballroom that's got maybe only 50 rooms wanting to be used, and so I think we'll see the introduction of room rentals. We will move, I think, in certain parts to a la carte pricing, or we will tailor build packages depending on what a customer is going to do in the hotel, because I think the things will be we'll be curating on the spot. But the reality is we're also going to work in markets where the price elasticity is not going to be there, and so therefore the hotels will continue to price the same way. So I think it will be, depending on which market we're in, will be a slower pace of change. But we are thinking about that at the moment. We're working out what is fair, and we talk about responsible and sustainable tourism. We need to pay our owners. We need to have profitable businesses, all of us, right? So I think we can expect some transition though in pricing.
All right. I'll move on to another question. Do you think the SG Clean certification is also necessary for physical events? I think this Adrian is asking more about booth structure, the supplier side, the hardware suppliers. Vincent, maybe you'd like to take the question.
So I think generally, if you're looking at booth structure, currently right now, maybe there's no specific accreditation for booth structure, but I think what we need to, as I mentioned, what we need to demonstrate really is that what is the cleaning process like in terms of when we collect back. If you look at shell scheme, for example, if you're looking at shell scheme structures where we actually collect and obviously we use them from a sustainability standpoint, what's the storage, what do we do when we actually store it, what are the cleaning processes that we have in place, and also before we actually deploy them again. I think that's something that's important. Not necessarily, I don't think necessarily there is the SG Clean standard will be applicable in that sense, because it's really not really a permanent structure kind of a basis. But I think that is if the provider or the supplier, for example, like Pico, is able to demonstrate that process, that should be what we recommend.
Right. Okay. Okay. Okay, let's see. One more question. What do you think would be the winning combo besides hygiene and social distancing in order to win business for a hotel or venues based on your feedback with your end clients and users? The winning combination.
Flexibility.
Sorry, Kerry?
Flexibility.
Flexibility.
Flexibility. Personalization.
Right.
I'll move away. I'll move away from COVID and just say something that I've always said for a long time, which is the winning combo will be creativity and ROI. I think creativity in our industry always wins. We need to use technology more and more. Use it as an opportunity again to use technology a lot more. Make it super engaging for the attendees, and therefore that will create a great ROI. I think that continues to cut through what we do.
Yep, agree.
Yeah, okay. I would just add on to similar to
go on, Vincent.
What Ian has mentioned. I think it's really, what we always do. Obviously, we are also in the creative industry, so it's be able to curate a very creative experience for your attendees, as well as, of course, in terms of ROI, it's really to be able to demonstrate ROI through data. Through data and not something that is subjective. So that helps when it's in the virtual environment. Obviously, everything can be tracked and can be monitored.
Okay. There's a question here. Alinda Tan is asking, with the existing physical distancing required, do you think, sorry, I'll rephrase that. Would participants still require to wear a mask if physical distancing measures are in place? What would you say about that? Vincent, any thoughts?
I think so. I think it's a combination of different measures that's in place. I think social distancing is physical distancing is one, but I think as I mentioned, in terms of if you look at what's been out there in terms of understanding the pandemic being spread by droplets, obviously, it's not just contact. I mean, there are some studies that it's also spread in through close proximity in the air, because some of the droplets obviously can still exist in the air. So I think it will be a combination of a few factors. Physical distancing, one; having the mask is another; and obviously having good air circulation within, or the filter changes. Very often, filter changes within the venues would also help. So I think it's less of what is the right way. It's more of how do I ensure that I optimize or ensure the safety of my attendees with the maximum measures that I could put in place in a reasonable time.
Okay, all right. We'll take up the last questions before we say goodbye. There are two questions from Juliana. She wanted to understand more about what does it mean that offline events may not be open to all attendees? Does it mean to limit it to a number of total number of packs? I think we tackled that earlier in the discussion, where we spoke of how maybe travel restrictions may impact the total attendee numbers that you are targeting. And she's asking, what would you suggest for a conference that typically attracts 1,500 packs? Does anyone have an answer for that?
I'm going to take a step at it. So I think, sorry.
Please go ahead.
So I think, yeah. So I think, I think because of the potential reduction in capacity for a lot of conference venues and trade show venues, due to the physical distancing that we need to have, the additional, or usually if you would have 1,000, probably you would now be only able to cater to 500, for example. The other 500 would then, obviously we mentioned, you could think of new revenue streams where the other 500 could actually join the conference virtually. But obviously the revenue model will have to change, right? You still manage, you may not even just cap to 500. You may actually have 1,500 or 2,000 in eventuality, because 500 is physical, but the other 1,000 or 2,000 can be through virtual. So I think that's where we are coming from in terms of that, having a physical venue going forward with a virtual component in terms of a hybrid event may eventually drive more ROI rather than the physical venue or physical event itself.
Okay. Does any of you have anything to add? Nope.
I mean, I think that's spot on. You may even have 200 people in another country linking up to one meeting in another country. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really up to the organizers to decide how they want to split it. I mean, like, you know, Ian gave an example. It could be just a conference built for one market, say China, and then the rest, you know, content is streamed to the rest of the world if travel continues to be restricted. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. It's a very quick 1 hour as always. And I'd like to say thank you to Ian, to Kerry, and to Vincent for spending time with us. And I hope we have been able to make our discussion useful for you in your business planning. And till we next meet, you know, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'm sure we will meet face to face again. Yeah. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.